of their mama. It's not like it will grow into something different like other animals or people do. It's just like a miniature, and then it just seems to get bigger. Well, Baba named that pair of pigs Nutty and Gutty. And at first it was very cute, and we were delighted. But when we found that they ate so much. No matter how much you give those pigs, they ate. And Baba always wanted his pets well fed. And it was a task. They seemed like an elephant. But when we left Bangalore, by the time we left Bangalore, they were huge, enormous they became. And that names really suited them, Nutty and Gutty. And what do you think? Baba gave those away to a family who loved him in Bangalore. He didn't want to bring those Nutty and Gutty back to Mehrabad. I think they would need a compartment in the train by themselves. See? True. So who do you think he gave them to? A Mohammedan family, Muslim family. I mean, you don't mention pork, you don't say pig, and you could have a dagger at you. But they loved Baba, and they took the pigs, and Baba said they're never to be given away. Just keep them as pets. And of course never slaughtered, of course, but they accepted that. They were fortunate.
Community must just adopt them.
But they were adorable. I tell you, always their heads were in.
But in France, the community.
The Mohammedans.
I don't.
The other Muslims must have.
No.
The other Muslims must have treated them aloof
I
after
don't
this.
know. This is the last that I'd heard of.
They must have their own story.
But I think they were also told. That if they found it too difficult, but if they found someone who would accept the pigs as pets, they could give it. Maybe that's what happened. Otherwise, they'd have to leave town and their job and everything for us. I must ask Eruch. This is the only up to that I know about. Yes. Dara, the other day we were talking about Baba Jan. I was telling you of all the incidents I know and my contact and mother's contact with Baba Jan. I forgot the very beginning and the very end. The very end, of course, I think I've said it before. When Baba Jan dropped her body, she was among the 5 who were responsible for bringing God, the ocean, to the shore, as it were. And Baba would always talk of Baba Jan with great love. If I showed him a picture of Baba Jan, which was going to some Baba lover who had ordered it or whatever, and he would speak with great love of Baba Jan. So the other day I was telling about the incidents I knew concerning Baba Jan in my childhood, when Mother and I would go to Baba Jan. But I forgot the ending and the beginning of my contact. The end was that I was in school, and the convent of Jesus and Mary is very near to where Baba Jan's seat was, and the Samadhi is. So one evening we heard that Baba Jan has dropped her body, and I was in school. And they closed the school earlier than, at least half an hour earlier than they meant to, when the news came. So anybody who would like to go could go, because there were some Mohammedan families in our school too. So I went straight from the convent to Baba Jan's place. When I heard that, I had my solar topi on, I had all my school books in my hands. In those days, there weren't enough books that you needed a satchel or a suitcase as they have now, the poor little children. So I went there and I found such a tremendous rush of humanity. The main road this way and that was completely crowded. All vehicles were stopped. No car or no cycle could go through. And the police had arranged it such a way that they were cordoned like a maze, not a straight passage towards where Baba was sleeping, as she appeared to be, but it was like this and like this, so that no matter how much of the rush would be, it wouldn't go straight there. And at the back of Baba Jan's tree, and where the Samadhi is now and where her seat was then, there's open space. And in that open space, they'd placed on an elevated way a huge piece of marble. And on it, Baba Jan was lying. And she appeared to be sleepy. I swear she still had rosy cheeks. The curves of her lips were like that, as if slightly smiling, because she was beautiful, even at her age. At any time, she was beautiful. And it took me 2 hours to get in to where she would be and bow down and to come out of that rush and to go home. Now, that's one time Mother wasn't worried about my not coming home on time, because those days were strict. Parents were strict with girls and children. You had to be back by such a time. Then if you were going out, then only with the permission of the parents. So I was supposed to be back by 5:30 or 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock I came back. And Mother was calm. She said, I knew that's where you must have been. So it was all right. Now the first time I saw her, my first memory, I would say memory, not because I actually remember the time, but because it has been maintained. That memory has been maintained by my aunt talking about it, my mother talking about it, the family talking about it, which has kept that memory fresh. When I was 4 years old, my aunt, my mother's sister, Daula Masi, who adored Baba also, like the rest of the family, she dressed me up in a sari. She put bells on my ankles, and we are going to Baba Jan. And they kept telling me, we're going to Baba Jan. And I know from later years, when I grew up and knew Baba Jan more intimately, that flowers were not offered to her. But I know also that when I was in that first meeting with Baba Jan, when I was, at least this first meeting, as far as I know of the incident, that I had a garland of flowers in my hand, which Baba Jan never wore, but you gave it in her hand. That's what I understood. So when this flower garland was given in my hand, and here I was dressed in a little sari with a little blouse that was specially made for me, and the anklets, bells on my ankles, and I insisted that I will wear this garland. Seemed to me it would be complete. I want to wear this garland. And they said, but you don't wear the garland. You have to give to Baba Jan. No, I want the garland. But this is not, they laughed, they scolded, and anyway, they took the garland from me and we walked to Baba Jan. They carried me half the way, a little way I walked. When we got to Baba Jan, and Baba Jan was delighted with this little one in a sari, like Baba would be. And then they gave the flowers in my hand and said, Baba Jan, this is enough. And she took the garland and she put it around my neck. What I wanted to do, but wasn't allowed to do, here she in her compassion said, fine, she knew. So when she saw the garland, she put it around my neck. Then I thought, that's fine, that completes me. Now that reminds me of a very beautiful incident here in Mahrazad, but you will have to have it direct from Eruch, because that is the time when Baba was in the seclusion here, and when at the end of this, it's a very beautiful long story, and I don't know much of it. I only know little bits of it. At the end of that thing, when the 4 he had selected for this period were not even in contact with the rest of the Mandali, and this is a picture taken at the end of the seclusion when Baba was seated out. He has a garland round his neck, and there's Gustadji, Baidul, Pendu, and Eruch. And after this picture was taken, Baba got up, took off the garland from round his neck, and garlanded Eruch. Put the garland round Eruch's neck, and had a picture taken. I still can't trace that picture. I don't know who it was that had taken that picture, but you must ask him.
A picture just of Eruch.
Just Eruch. He's never garlanded anybody. But this is the garden, this is the picture. But the story of the seclusion and all is beautiful. Get it from him, maybe tomorrow. Another picture I have is of Francis. Here's a picture of you. Do you remember this picture? There you are, watching Baba. Baba watching drafts. Yes.
Yeah, this is the first day after the afternoon.
Yes. You can't say that so. And one picture I have of the same series in which Baba's fingers are moving so fast. You know, as if he's really playing, he's doing something with these moves. See, you want to see Francis? Now that we have so much of Australians and New Zealanders. Baba watching the game of checkers. Understand what it was.
Baba's brother John.
Yeah, Jal and Kumar. It almost looked like this one, but then this is Kumar yet up there.
This is Kumar?
Kumar.
I thought Sinu is Kumar.
Right, they all like it, but Kumar said.
So this is John.
But you know, in one picture of the same series, as I was saying, Baba's fingers were moving so fast that while they were playing, he was, walking, and goodness knows what each movement for what country or what. Baba's sometimes give an indication.
There's a film of Baba at Myrtle Beach, outside one of the barns, sitting very quietly. Everyone sitting very quietly, with his hands moving furiously. I get so frightened, not frightened, but uneasy when I see that film. It's incredible. Some very unknown and mysterious and unsettling.
You know, it has seldom happened that we have looked at Baba when we are seeing a film and a cinema. But because Baba wants it to be natural, Baba's brought you for this entertainment. We didn't sit there gazing at Baba like that. It was so we were seeing the film. But twice this has happened. Even in the dark, for some reason, I turned around to see Baba, and Baba's fingers were going so fast. And that is what we understood from him to be his collective working. Wherever a lot of people were gathered, where the attention was focused one-pointedly at something, with a lot of people, whether it was a game they were watching, whether it's a film, whether it's a gathering of ascetics and sadhus or whatever. And that is, I think, why when a film was not a very exciting or good film, and people's minds were not really focused as one-pointedly as it would have happened had the film been good. So when there were bad films, as we call it, we had to sit through it to the bitter end, because Baba wasn't leaving. It hadn't, But when it was a good film, everybody's attention was so much on there that sometime before the end, Baba said, let's go home, come on. He wouldn't even say that. Somebody would push in the dark, say, Baba's leaving, Baba's leaving. Oh, you got up in the dark, fumbled, because the lights weren't on yet, and tried to follow. And I tried to go as last as possible because I wanted to see the ending, what was happening to see. And I said, yes. And they knew it, because even after you come out, I pulled the curtain and still see, whether Pauline was still hanging from the cliff or had she gone down. And they would say, what happened? And I tell them, not often, not all the time. Yes, that's Francis. But this, I would also like to know the details. Who's that? Yeah, I know, Rip Van Winkle. That's amazing. Yeah.
In such an amazing way. He looks so otherworldly.
Absolutely. He had a beard on there. But what personality. When he's dressed up, he looks like a Frenchman. smart
Incredible
Frenchman. I knew because when we went to the West in 1952, oh, he looked so dapper. Yeah, he did look Indian, and I wouldn't say English, but French, yes. A count, maybe. I
He
don't know.
doesn't look
But you know-
too Indian really in this picture either, I would say. His features don't...
He was very fair complexioned,
Mm.
very fair complexioned.
And rosy cheeks. Always rosy cheeks.
Yeah, rosy cheeks. Not very, but still.
But they're always.
That is
So
why.
a count in rags, then.
Yeah. So when we were in 1952, and Gustaji was with us, and you see, after the accident, when Baba and Mara and Donkin, Rano, they had gone ahead to Myrtle Beach, back to Myrtle Beach. Now we were coming from Prague in a van, a car, a vehicle that was driven by Adi, in which were Meru, because she was not injured badly, but she had a broken arm, and she had to be helped, and me, who was the least hurt physically, and Gustaji, and Delia de Leon. And I mean, she's a lovely companion, but it was to be marvelous. So many amusing things would happen. So, actually, when we were first in Prague, and Sarosh used to drive us around, and Delia would be in it too. Delia had a way of suddenly being startled and asking, "Oh, what's that?" You know, "Oh, where are we going?" If Sarosh turned to the right, she said, "Oh, I thought it was to the left. Sarosh." And Sarosh said, and then afterwards, Sarosh told me, he said, "You know, if this keeps on any longer, I don't know what's going to happen. I might say something." And I said, "No, Sarosh is our Delia, you know." And, so at class, I went to Delia, and I said, "You know, Delia, you know, Sarosh, of course, such a fine man, and we all love him, and you love him and all. Everything's nice about Sarosh, but there is one thing I want to tell you about him." "Oh, yes?" And I said, "Well, you know, when he's driving, he's a very good driver, but if somebody says anything or asks him a question, his hand twitches, you know, it just twitches like that, and goodness knows where it might land us." Oh, I didn't know that. "Oh, I'm so glad you told me." So after that, when she would be sitting next to Sarosh in the car, she'd say, you know, she just would hold back right in the middle of it. But one day when she was sitting at the back with me, and she said, a van went by on the road, on the highway, and I knew there was fish in it because we could smell it, you know. So Delia was lying back with eau de cologne on her forehead, and suddenly she must have gotten the smell. She said, "Oh, what's that?" She saw the van go by. I said, "Corpses." "Corpses," said Delia. "Oh." And I said, "Well, dead fish, they're corpses, you know." Well, there was that. So when we would stop at places, later when Gustaji, Meru, Delia, myself with Adi driving, when we were going across back to Myrtle Beach, stopping at motels on the way, we would come at these little places and we'd stop just for gas or whatever, just stop for a while, and Gustaji would immediately get down. Now Delia never called him Gustaji, she would say Gerstaji, you know, Gerstaji. So Gerstaji would go out, and wherever he'd find a faucet, he'd wash his face and put a lot of cold water on the top of his head, which was bald, you see, and he'd come and it was very, very hot at this time that I'm talking about. And Delia was lying in the car, sitting in the car with her head back, and oh Lord, it's so hot. And she put some eau de cologne on her forehead. She didn't know what she'd do without that. And Gustaji comes and stands outside the window and looks at her. I'm next to Delia, and Gustaji says to, you know, with those alphabets in the sign language, his wasn't gestures, his was sign language, "Tell her that she has pink cheeks in spite of the heat. Although she's fainting, she still has pink cheeks, and just like my aunt used to have, that she reminds me of my aunt." And Delia said, oh, what's Gerstich saying? You know, she looks at me. And I said, well, he says you remind him of his aunt. Oh, Gerstich. I'm not, no. When she was very young and beautiful. And not, you know, his aunt when he was young and his aunt was, oh, Gerstich. And why does he think I look like his aunt? Well, Gerstich says because she always has pink cheeks. So I said, Gustage's aunt always had pink cheeks like you. And he says, although you're, you know, on the point of fainting from the heat and the journey, you still have pink cheeks. Oh, Gustache, says Delia, do you think they are my cheeks? She brings out a tissue, wets it with her tongue, and removes the pink, you see. She had a little rouge on. You see, Gerstich, they're not my cheeks. And Gerstich goes, mouth open, he couldn't believe it. He'd never heard of rouge, I think, you know. And Delia, she's such a sport, so lovely. And she goes, we laugh and we go on. She was right there at the time of the accident, you know, in the car, second car. Acha, so you remember about this sometime when Eruch is well and...
You saw a movie of Delia, didn't you?
Huh?
You saw Delia's movie, didn't you?
Oh, yes, lovely film, movie called Delia. And it's all Baba, all Baba.
She's interviewed, is she?
Huh?
Which movie is that?
I think a movie that Peter Townsend made of Delia.
How Delia came to Baba and she tells him.
Sometimes it's because all of us, we're all young together and we're all old now and all have young chicks under our wings, as it were. You know, I mean, I could see Delia. I mean, she's so good with them and she has so much to give. She's one of those old faithfuls. But she flutters about, you see, with all the young ones around her. And not long before Baba dropped his body, not long, there was that letter from Delia, you know. We are so few in England, Baba lovers, and we're all getting on. And the youngest one is Shireen, that's Baba's niece, who was just a child then. And then suddenly, as if all the seeds that he had sowed and planted, suddenly with that grace, they all suddenly came up together. And then wherever you look, oh, it made her very happy. हम ना बाजार में मंगा टिकरा कम ना after lunch. अच्छा. Karachi cake. Is it? Okay, Jai Baba. You see, I'm not Eruch and I'm 10 minutes ahead of lunchtime.
Recordings made on September 3rd, 1981 ends here. Mandali Hall, Merazad, September 4th, 1981.
Marriage feast. Yeah.
Is that the way to pronounce it?
Yeah,
Jam
well,
banana?
it doesn't matter. You come here.
Do you want
read
a
the
cushion behind your back here?
No, I don't want. Thank you. Yeah. Put the. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, go ahead.
Just a small chapter.
Good.
Don't be nervous.
Panicky.
Go on.
Okay, the marriage feast of Jambanara. There was a man in Jambanara who was to be married the next day, and he thought, might Buddha, the Blessed One, be present at the wedding? And the Blessed One passed by his house and met him, and when he read the silent wish in the heart of the bridegroom, he consented to enter. When the Holy One appeared, with the retinue of his many bhikshus, the host, whose means were limited, received them as best he could, saying, "Eat, my lord, and all your congregation, according to your desire." While the holy men ate, the meats and drinks remained undiminished, and the host thought to himself, "How wondrous is this! I should have had plenty for all my relatives and friends. Would that I had invited them all." When this thought was in the host's mind, all his relatives and friends entered the house. And although the hall in the house was small, there was room in it for all of them. They sat down at the table and ate, and there was more than enough for all of them. The Blessed One was pleased to see so many guests full of good cheer, and he quickened them and gladdened them with words of truth, proclaiming the bliss of righteousness. The greatest happiness which a mortal man can...
Now read it with great emphasis and force, distinctly.
The greatest happiness which a mortal man can imagine is the bond of marriage that ties together two loving hearts. But there is a greater happiness still. It is the embrace of truth. Death will separate husband and wife, but death will never separate him who has espoused the truth. Therefore be married unto the truth, and live with the truth in holy wedlock. The husband who loves his wife and desires for a union that shall be everlasting must be faithful to her, so as to be like truth itself, and she will rely upon him and revere him and minister unto him. And the wife who loves her husband and desires for a union that shall be everlasting must be faithful to him, and as to be like truth itself. And he will place his trust in her, he will honour her, he will provide for her. Verily I say unto you, their wedlock will be holiness and bliss, and their children will become like unto their parents, and will bear witness to their happiness. Let no man be single, let every one be wedded in holy love to the truth. And when Mara, the destroyer, comes to separate the visible forms of your being, you will continue to live in the truth, and you will partake in the life everlasting, for the truth is immortal. There was no one among the guests, but was strengthened in his spiritual life, and recognized the sweetness of a life of righteousness, and they took refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha.
Sangha means the foundation, whatever you call it, the fold. Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
See what he says. The greatest happiness which a mortal can imagine, is the bond of marriage that ties together two loving hearts. But there is a greater happiness still. It is the embrace of truth. Death will separate husband and wife, but death will never separate him who has espoused the truth. Therefore be married unto the truth and live with the truth in holy wedlock. The husband who loves his wife and desires for a union that shall be everlasting must be faithful to her, so as to be like truth itself, and she will rely upon him and revere him and minister unto him. And the wife who loves her husband and desires for a union that shall be everlasting must be faithful to him, so as to be like truth itself. And he will place his trust in her, he will honor her, and he will provide for her. Verily I say unto you, their wedlock will be holiness and bliss, and their children will become like unto their parents, and will bear witness to their happiness. Let no man be single, let everyone be wedded in holy love to the truth. So he wants us to get married, he wants us, but then not married because of the happiness that the union of marriage gives us, but remember, it's More than that, one has to hold fast to the truth. In the wedlock, never, forget the side of the truth, because that is greater happiness. If you hold on to the truth till the end, there is no better happiness than that in your married life.
It's true.
Yeah. Never be deceitful to your partner. Be honest and faithful to one another. And love each other.
Mansari told me yesterday during the week something, because we were talking about marriage and we were talking about why so many people get divorced, especially people who are Baba lovers. Well, anyway, and she said that marriage should be like your relationship with God. It should be really competitive, that you should be competing with each other to see who can please each other the most. Make each other happier the most.
Yeah.
That was really good.
I haven't seen many like that.
Pardon?
I haven't seen many like that.
No, but the thing is that we forget, in our attempt to seek happiness out of marriage, we forget that that happiness is based on the principle of sacrifice. Yeah. Happiness can be had only through giving others the happiness that you seek for.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's really true.
Yeah. You cannot suck out happiness from anybody. So there should be the factor of offering, sacrifice, giving in, a challenge that who can best give in, you see. Who can give in most, you see. There should be that competitive feeling of offering oneself.
You have to.
Then you get love surfacing itself.
You have to give up a little bit. You have to give up yourself all the time. You know? That's what Baba says about marriages. Yeah, it's a.
And sparks fly off sometimes.
Yes, it doesn't matter. But that is the flavor.
Enough sparks to start a bushfire.
This is all fun in the end, though, isn't it?
Yeah. If you are a bush, then it starts a bushfire. But if you are that perennial green tree which stands erect in the name of truth, it will never have a bushfire. You human beings, they say, Baba says that we are rational human beings. We are not bushes to create fire. We don't take it seriously as we used to take seriously the marriages in the past. That's the thing. It's fun. We say it's fun. And there have been many cases where youngsters have had to take flight, you see, from the auditorium where the marriage was to be celebrated, you see. Saying, when the priest comes there and says, Savadhan, means beware. See what's happened. Do you all open your ceremony with thus? Beware? No. Now you all have forgotten.
Everybody has different ceremonies.
Yeah.
But
not everybody.
No, not beware, no.
Yeah, beware of what you're plunging into now.
No, they don't have that. They say if anyone wants to sort of object, now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
So here it is there, Savadhan, not once, 3 times it is said, Savadhan. Means, are you all in your senses? He's asking both of them. Are you all in your senses? Are you all in your senses what you are about to do? So that's the phrase is Savadhan. So we have had a couple of instances, you see, where the bridegroom has taken flight at these words. He says, yes, I am fully aware of what my life should be. And he left. And then he became a saint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there when everyone was in the church.
Yeah, he led that life then. Before the thing could be, clinch or the blessings were given, the beginning, very beginning of it. You see, he took flight.
In the West, Eruch, people walk into marriage thinking at the backs of their minds, and I know it because I have lots of friends who have done it, that okay, I'll give it a go, but if
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, then it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
You know, it's not a real committal from the heart.
Yes, it should be so. Otherwise, it reflects. Then again, there are a lot of years that one has to pass through, you see, and equalize the impressions that have been exchanged. In a married life, the impressions get neutralized, you see, and you don't, as a resultant effect, you are not bound with your cohibition, with your love affairs or passions that they are the sparks, really speaking, they are the sparks that fly out of one's consciousness. They don't burn the bush because there is no bush left there, you see. If it is with one partner. But if it goes on, like animals, you see, you change partners and all that, then it's a terrible thing. You get yourself burnt. That's why it is said, best is to stick to, first of all, best is not to get married. And most especially at the time of the Advent. You see. Because that's the regeneration, you see, of the soul, the time of the Advent. Then secondly, if you remain celibate, if that is not possible, there is absolutely no harm in yourself getting married. Get married. No harm whatsoever. As he says, yeah. But then this is what he wants us to lead the life. Remember that happiness is not in this.
No.
But there is a greater happiness. It is. For the mortals, it is the greatest happiness in cohibition, that act of cohibition. But it is the seventh shadow of the seven shadows of reality. It is the seventh shadow of the seven shadows of reality. Mind you, this is what his words are. This happiness, or that bliss of reality. So there is that. That is how it is. It, as I told you all, that everything is linked with reality, our existence. So that infinite bliss, the realization, is also linked here this way, of union to your true self. Here, your union with your partner. So it is great happiness, but it's the seventh shadow of the seven shadows of reality, real bliss. So it is so. But then if you adhere to that truth, then everything is fine. It is very fine. Even your progeny, you see, will bless you, will glorify the parents, you see, and so forth. But stick to it. But if you stick to it, through thick and thin, through life and death, till death do us apart. We all have that?
Yeah.
But if that is not possible, if there is a divorce, then do one thing then. Well, you can't help it. You can't live that life, you see, through some disability or some such thing or whatever it is, the person has fallen in love with somebody else or something happens, Then, if you are a true lover, Baba says, if you really are a true lover of truth, make others happy. Because all this is just seeking happiness. It roots in seeking happiness, isn't it? This getting married and living that life of married life. What is that after all? Why did you go into?
Me.
Not you, but I am talking about why do we go into it? To seek happiness. It is a source of happiness. It is the greatest happiness, as Buddha himself testifies, for the mortals. There's no doubt about it. But if you really want happiness, continued happiness, and the case is that, well, your partner wants to dissolve this pact of happiness or whatever you call it, then do one thing. The happiness can be derived. Suppose if the person falls in love with another person. This is the example Baba gives. Suppose if my wife falls in love with another man, and if I really seek happiness out of this union that I have had, and she falls in love with another man, is the bounden duty of my bounden duty is to encourage her and get married. She cannot afford, so I will arrange for the wedding and all that, and get everything done, you see, and get her married to the man. And if she feels and remains happy, and the happiness that I wanted it continues within me. But who is that daring person, Baba said? Who dares to do that? You profess that you loved her and she has left and all that. If you were really to love her, you will seek her happiness. That is the challenge of offering, sacrifice, giving in and all that sort of thing. After having exchanged many such challenges, the ultimate is, no, she doesn't want to live with you. Because she's in love with somebody. All right, I'll get you married to her, to him. Come on. It's like that. And vice versa with woman. What were you saying? Somebody was saying something?
You right?
Hmm?
You all right?
Yeah.
Good.
Why? What's the matter?
You were going like
Do I sound crazy?
I could hear all your bones going crack, crack, crack. Eruch, is it true that when you marry somebody that karmically you have a tie with them?
Yeah.
That is...
You create a tie with karmically, yeah.
And you said before that when you're married, impressions are neutralised?
Only if you stick to the partner.
Only
It takes
the same
time.
partner, right. So what happens if karmically you have a connection with someone and then you have done some really horrendous things in the past and you walk into a relationship with somebody who hasn't done quite so many horrendous things, does that mean that you take on from each other? Is that the balancing out?
Yeah, balancing out.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Thank you.
Yeah. This is what we have heard from him. I don't see what the balancing process and all that, but the assurance that he has given us. Provided you stick to your partner for lifetime and acknowledge that partnership and live honoring the other partner, being faithful and this and that and all that, truthful in your marriage tie, then that is the thing. Yeah, it gets neutralized. That doesn't mean that suppose if your partner has done horrendous acts and all that and he karmically he outweighs your karma and all that so that you will have to bear the burden of that. No, it gets neutralized by the bond of honesty, the truth that prevails between the honesty of the two in your interactions. Provided, again it comes to my mind, you don't continue to think about it. The story you know about the two monks? You don't know, again no. What happened is there were two monks living in a monastery and the abbot was very strict. You know that story? Yeah. So the abbot was very strict. And there were quite a few monks there, about 500 of them in a monastery, huge monastery. Two monks, coincidentally, had one cubicle to be shared among themselves, like others. Each one was not given what you call a separate room or something like that. So there were two monks living at one place, in a room. So there were all the rules, do's and don'ts and all this is there, discipline. And one of the most important rule was that they should return before it is dark. They can go out for walks and all that, so they should not touch money, they shouldn't touch women and all that. Don'ts are there, commonly known. And the do's were there, you can go out for strolls and walks, but see that after you have finished your chores, but see that you return before dark. So one day these two brothers, the monks, not brothers, but brother monks, went out for a walk and stroll, and they were very friendly, chummy, because they shared the same room and they had the same common, they had come to know each other, you see. And so they were happy in company of each other. And whenever they would go out for walks, they would exchange their thoughts and feelings and all that and talk about God. What else is there to be talked about? One day, as they had gone out, it was monsoon time, you see, rainy season. And when they are returning, they return by a different route. And they see from a distance a beautiful damsel standing. From a distance you can see that. And standing, why is she standing there waiting for something? Both are talking, they are so engrossed in talking about the truth. So they see a woman standing there. And nothing, just they are continuing with the talk and all. Both have registered that. As they come there, they realize that, well, she is helpless. She has dressed herself meticulously. for dance or party or something in all white and satin and all that. Everything so beautiful, but it's impossible. She's helpless because the whole road, the track that was there, was pond of water, and she was wondering how to cross that. You see, dirt roads are there. Yeah. So one of the brothers, monk, while talking and all that, both registered the same thoughts. It's common knowledge. Yeah. So what he did, without waiting for anything else, he just took her by the waist, you see, lifted her and took her and crossed the pond and put her there. And she profusely thanked them and all that. And they just smiled and they went and continued their talks, you see, whatever it is. But the other brother was horrified at the sight, at what has happened. As they are proceeding towards the gate of the monastery, it's evening now, it's getting dark. So the other one, the one who had not lifted the girl, taps on the back of the other brother monk and says, "Brother, are we supposed to enter the monastery now?" So he says, "What's the matter with you? Why?" "Yeah, we have to enter before it's dark." He says, "We are not. Do you think that it is all right if we do that?" He says, "Why not? What's the matter?" He says, "You forgot. We are not supposed to touch women and all that. And you even lifted the woman by her waist and all." Oh, he says, "We left her there and you continue to bring her to the gates? We have dropped her there. Yeah. But why do you bring her to the gate of the monastery?" See how it is. Yeah. Do you
Yes, I
realize
do.
the implication?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So this is what happens. You continue to build up. You live in it, wallow in these things. Once you just throw them off, you see, what has that to do?
Worry.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Without worry, things should be a lot better.
You build up.
Ego thrives on worry. Loves to worry.
Today you are speaking about the rose. If you carry a rose in your mind, you will become the rose garden. If you carry the thorns of the rose garden, then you have the thorns.